On August 28th, 1963, a young minister from Atlanta led a freedom parade towards the Lincoln Memorial. His name was Martin Luther King. He spoke from the temple where forever the memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined to the nation. And he issued a clarion moral call. Dr. King came to the Lincoln Memorial that day, he said, to collect a promissory note. He was a revolutionary who did not come to tear down, but instead to demand that the republic of which he was a citizen live up to its high ideals and promises. Martin Luther King demanded that the United States become a nation where all men are, in fact, created equal, endowed by a creator with inalienable rights that include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Dr. King led a march just over 100 years on from the Battle of Gettysburg. He came that day to the Lincoln Memorial a mere 40 years after its dedication in 1923. On that day, the President of the United States spoke before a segregated crowd, and he said that the monument was not for that generation, but for ours and every future generation of Americans, as a reminder, a cautionary tale, but also a tribute to the magnanimous leadership of a man who had malice for no people, the great emancipator, the man who understood that the war between the states had become imbued with a high moral purpose, and understood the reconciling that was forced to occur because of slavery. Before he would be assassinated, Abraham Lincoln talked to the country about binding up the wounds of that war, but also, and perhaps less memorably, about what it would take to win the war. Lincoln offered no compromises with the Confederate South. He understood that the victory necessary would need to be absolute. When the bullet struck him down, surely he could not have imagined that a myth would overwhelm that victory in time, that a lost cause would cover reality, and that in the end, that the Great War would become about something other than for which it was fought, which of course was slavery. The simple fact is that the virus, the cancer of American life, the hatred that burns in the human heart has always been present in America. It has always manifested itself politically. It's gone by many names: the Confederacy, Jim Crow, the Ku Klux Klan, and now MAGA. Tonight, on this day where we remember the legacy of Martin Luther King, one of the moral giants in the history of the United States, in every way a peer of the founding fathers, who redeemed the promise of the Republic through his moral leadership, and at long last helped make America a country where all Americans had equal rights, if not yet equal opportunities. There is a sadness to this day, because on it, a day where we remember one of America's moral giants, Republicans in Iowa will send Donald Trump down the campaign trail with his first votes of 2024. Those first votes marked the first steps along his path to a return to power, where he promises revenge and he promises oppression for his enemies, imprisonment, malice, for all who dare oppose him. He is a man who does not care about the history of the country, the purpose of the country, its ideas, or its ideals. He is a low man with a small purpose. Power. It's all he cares for. Many people tonight, as they see the election results coming in that show Donald Trump blowing out his opposition, they will be concerned, frightened, scared. But the remedy to Trump is to push away that fear. Be not afraid. This is a moment that demands confrontation. It requires an embrace of Americanism, to pick up the highest ideals that have ever been put to paper by the mind of man. This notion that all of us are created equally and endowed by a creator with inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is what the campaign of 2024 must become about, though it is not yet about. Millions and millions of Americans feel that they do not live in a democracy. The Black woman, age 31 in Ohio, who was recently prosecuted for desecration of a corpse because she had a miscarriage at 21 weeks and 5 days and put the remains in the toilet. Does she live in a democracy? What about the millions of Americans who are unbanked, who were forced to get money through predatory lenders in check cashing storefronts? Do they live in a democracy? What about the man who's terrified of being fired in his job because he said the word whiteboard? Does he live in a democracy? What about the young Black kid arrested because he was smoking a joint? Does he live in a democracy? Tens and tens and tens of millions of Americans, including 40% of the population that doesn't have $400 available. They don't feel that they live in a democracy where they have freedom, where they have agency, where they have control, and where they have choice. And they're angry about it because something that they once knew or thought that they understood, the American dream, has been stripped away from them. People today aren't focused on climbing up a ladder. They're terrified about being pulled down it. And that makes them susceptible to a lie, one of the oldest in all the history of the world. It's the lie of the demagogue seeking power, a man like Trump with no principles and a brutal heart, who looks and says, I'm strong enough to take on all the world's villains. Never mind that he is one himself. That lie has led to heartache and suffering at levels that beggar imagination. And all through history, that lie has been confronted by important and profound moral truths about freedom and liberty and love. In American history, there were few men who were ever greater apostles of freedom and truth than the Reverend Martin Luther King. Today, we honor a great man upon a sad occasion. The votes that will be made later for Trump are a refutation of the life and the sacrifice and the martyrdom of Martin Luther King. They are a strike against the American Revolution, against the long history of the Republic, and the sacrifices that took to bring freedom to every inch and every corner of the land. a great day will have a sad ending this evening, because America will take its first steps towards a tragedy of its own making. We are a great nation who has been dominated for 7 long years, about to become 8, and maybe more, by the worst amongst us, stoked by a corrupted industry that has made billions, spreading his venom. Martin Luther King did not spread venom in his life. He spread love. And he gave us a vision at the edge of his death about where America was going and what it would become. He told us that he wished to have a long life, that longevity had its purpose, but none of that mattered to him at the edge of the river, because it was there that Martin Luther King told us from the mountaintop he saw a vision of the just society that is the end of the work of perfecting the Union. This great experiment is a human one. Human beings are capable of doing terrible things to one another, just as they are capable of great love and joy. Today is a day where we remember the capacity for greatness within a human being and his message of love, peace, and justice. But we weigh it against its opposite that has manifested itself once again in America's long fight between what is right and what is true, and what is evil and what is wrong. Whatever the name of MAGA may be remembered as, it will always be remembered as the peer of its antecedents. MAGA is Jim Crow. MAGA is the Confederacy. MAGA is the threat. And today, on this Martin Luther King Day, it will have a victory. And because that is true, we should all pray for America and resolve to make sure in November this force is defeated before it defeats the Republic.